Welcome back. In this video, we are going to create a list box, and you can see here we have a little list box with the entries. So we have Bayern Munich having 3 points or goals, and then we have Real Madrid with 2 goals, and the match is almost over. So we are using multiple different elements here, which we haven't used yet. And when I select one and I click on this button, show selected, a little message box pops up and tells me about the selected box and gives me some further information, or at least in this case it just gives me this information. And of course you could add a little more information in here, so you could build a little application from that which takes the data from the internet and is updated all the time, and well, simply shows you the current score of the current matches. All right, let's go ahead and start doing that. So I'm going to create a new project for this, which I'm gonna call ListBox. So let's go ahead, and I have this name already, so I'm gonna call it C. And in here I'm gonna mainly use XAML, so I'm gonna drag it all up, and we have this, well, our image here, or our window here still. But now what I want to do is I want to use grids again, but I'm going to use multiple rows, of course. So let's go ahead and create a column definition, a row definition, and those kind of things. And by the way, we actually only need 2 columns, so it's not going to be that complicated. So we only have 2 different columns. We don't have multiple rows, so we won't need the row definition. But for you, if you recall how to do that, that's always good to know. So you need to column definitions first, and in here you can define your columns. And I'm gonna go ahead and define a column with a width of star and a column definition with a width of, let's say, 100. So I want to have a button at the second column, pretty much. That's what I want to use here. All right. So these are the 2 columns that I have. This one is going to contain the list box, and the right one will simply contain this huge button that we can click once we want to get more information about a match. So let's create a list box now, and I'm gonna use the list box keyword. This list box will get a name. I'm gonna call this list box matches, and I'm gonna horizontally align the content. So horizontal content alignment. And I'm gonna stretch it so that it stretches out the content of my list box. And this one here, this LB matches, should be the name, by the way. So name is LB matches. All right, next I want a specific item template. So a list box can have a item template. So I'm gonna use list box dot item template, and in there I can have a data template. So I'm going to create a new data template, and now I can finally go ahead and add the text blocks or the information. So as you can see, it's structured in a way that we haven't seen yet, but that's totally fine. You will see how it works in a second. So we have this list box, then we have the item template, then the data template, and in here we can display the data. And I'm going to use a grid here. So I'm going to use a grid with margins of 2, and this grid needs column definitions as well. So I'm going to create a new grid dot column definitions tag, and in here I'm going to define the column definitions, or create the column definitions. And by the way, I'm going to keep it simple here as well. And what I want to have is simply a width, which is going to take the same space as all the other columns. So I will have 5 columns here. One is going to be the team 1. The second one is going to be the score. Third one is score again. Fourth one is the team, or the second team. And then finally, we have the progress. So we want to know how far in the game already is, or the match is. And now I want to have multiple text blocks. So one is going to be a text block with a grid dot column position of 0 and a text that I want to bind. So I'm gonna bind this text to team 1. Now you might wonder, what is team 1? Well, we need to define this team 1 in our code behind. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, before I go any further here with example, I'm gonna go ahead into the code behind, and I'm gonna create a new class which is gonna take care of matches. So this is just going to be a very simple class, public class match, and this class will only contain properties. So public int, actually let's create a property here, so like this is going to be easier. Prop int score 1, then another one, score 2, then I need one which is going to be a string, which is going to be team 1, and then another one which is also a string, and this one will be team 2. And now finally I have one which is also an integer, which will be the completion. So I want to know how far in the game is, or how many minutes of the total match have passed. So these are the general information about this match class. And you see this class is amazing, and generally object-oriented programming is going to be amazing in here, because we simply can adjust that. If we want to add some more information, for example, we want to add the players who are on the field, then we could create a whole new property which is going to take care of the players. Or we could create a class which is going to be used within match, which is going to contain all the different player names or something like that. So that's great for extensibility, so you can easily maintain that code. Now we have this match class, and within my main window I want to go ahead and create a list of matches. So I'm going to create a list, and I'm going to call it match, or actually I'm going to use match as the list element that I want to be in there, and it's going to be called matches, which is going to be a new list of matches. All right, so now I have this matches list, and I can add elements to that list. So I'm going to add a new match, which is going to be my team 1 with the value of Bayern Munich. I'm a big Bayern fan in Germany, and then they're the best team in Germany, and they're pretty good internationally. Hopefully they win the Champions League this year. Still looking good. They just beat Sevilla. Sorry for the Sevilla fans. Then we have the score 1, which I'm gonna set as 3, and the score 2, which I'm gonna set at 2. And then finally we have a completion, which I'm gonna set at something like 85. So the match is almost over, and Bayern is 1 point ahead, or 1 goal ahead. Okay, so that's generally how I can create a new match. And you see, we didn't need to create a constructor. We didn't need to create any methods in that class. We simply created a very basic class which has properties, and we assigned those properties in here. And now we have an object with all of those properties, and that's great, because now we can use that in order to show it onto our list here, or actually onto our list box. So I have this first text block, which is going to be team 1. Then I have the second text block, which should be connected to the score of team 1. So it's going to be score 1. Then the next text block should be information about team 2. So this is going to be team 2. And by information about team 2, it's just the name of team 2. And then finally score 2. And very finally, so last, I want to have a, well, want to have a progress bar, actually, not a text block, which will inform me about how far in the game is. So a progress bar, which I'm gonna set at grid.column 4. And we will need to change the columns here as well, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have these 5 columns that we have set up here. And now I'm gonna set the team 1 at column 0, score of team 1 at column 1, and so forth. And now I want to have a minimum value for that progress bar, which is going to be 0, and a maximum value. And if you know about soccer, then you know that it's 90 minutes, or football, based on where you're from or which English you want to use, British English or American English. So we have a value that we want to bind, and we did that with this text here. So we simply bound to text, but now we want to bind the value of a progress bar, because a progress bar is not just a text. It's actually, well, it needs an integer type of value. So what I'm going to bind here is going to be the completion. And now we should be able to test that. So even though it's complaining, that's because I'm not closing the progress bar. All right, but as you see, there's nothing here because the values that we are using, they are in code, and well, it doesn't compile the code yet. It doesn't check the code of our main class here, of our XAML file. And now let me check if we can run it. Okay, and by the way, if we want to run it, there's one important thing to add, and that's lbmatches.item source is equal to our matches. Now, what is lbmatches and what is the item source? Well, if we look at lbmatches, that is our list box. So I called this list box LB, standing for list box, matches. So this list box is going to take care of all of our matches, or it's going to display all of our matches. That's the idea behind it, right? And it needs a data source because otherwise it won't show any data. And I just said, okay, I want it to be the data source of our matches. And well, the matches should be the data source. So now it should show this one match, which is Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid with a 3-2 score. And there we are, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. Bayern has 3 goals, Real has 2 goals. And then we have the progress bar, which says time's almost up. So the match is almost over. Now, I wanted to have the score in the middle of the 2 teams. So I will need to change the order here. And I'm going to change it like this. Of course, I need to adjust the columns here as well, because I would like to have the scores just next to each other. It's easier to compare then. So let's run it again. And we can see Bayern has 3 and Real Madrid has 2. And there should actually be a little, well, the text should be centered. So what we can do here is actually make it a little nicer for the score. And I'm gonna align it. And I can do that with align. That will be horizontal alignment center. I'm gonna do that for both the scores. So let's run it again. As you can see now, this is how you can then adjust your user interface and apply your changes and make it a little nicer. What you could even do is align this number towards the right and that number towards the left. And you could even enter something like a colon in between or something like that. All right. So that's our first match. And now for you, a little challenge, please go ahead and add multiple different matches. And it doesn't have to be soccer, or football. You can enter matches of whatever. The progress bar should be something like the time that is up, and you have simply the 2 teams with their scores on each side. So please go ahead and add that. All right, I hope you tried it, and it should be pretty straightforward because we have created this match here, and the only thing that we need to do is to copy and paste that multiple times, and now simply adjust the team names and the scores. So I had something prepared here, and as I said, I'm more of a football fan, so I'm gonna add football teams, international one, PSG, standing for Paris Saint-Germain. This is going to be against Barca, and Barca is currently losing against PSG, but they can still win it as they still have plenty of time, so it's just the 55th minute. Then we have BVB Dortmund, which is the second best team in Germany most of the time, and they play against AS Roma. Then we have another team here, which is Manchester United. They play against LA Galaxy. pretty unlikely, but it can happen that they play against each other. And I'm gonna get rid of the last score just so I don't have to type or to think about a different team here as well. So this match is not that long or hasn't passed that long. And here Manchester United have scored 1 goal, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic has also scored 1 goal for LA Galaxy. So that's the 35th minute, and Barca, well, I think that is all good. So we can keep it as is, and now we can run it again. Then you will see that we have this little interface here showing us all the different teams and their score, and then you can also see how long in they are. Of course, you could add something like starting time, ending time. You could add all kinds of information, whatever you can think of. What would be pretty nice is if you had something like all the players. So if you want to add the lineup in here, what you could do is, of course, create a new property called lineup, which will just be a long, maybe array of strings or even a list of strings containing all the different player names. And then you could display that once somebody presses on one of those and presses the select button, but we don't have the select button yet. And that's what we're going to add now, because you might say, I want to have some additional information there. And that's very relevant. That's very good if you want that. Or, well, if you ever come to the point where you actually will need that in an application. So I'm going to put that outside of the list box. And by the way, our list box, I didn't set up any column in here, but that's something that, well, WPF does for us. So the first element is going to be automatically at 0, 0 if we don't assign it. But I'm going to assign it in a second. First of all, I'm going to add a button though. So let's create a new button. Let's set it at grid column 1. And let's add a click event to it. And I'm going to create a new event. So I'm just gonna say new event handler, and it's gonna add a button click method for me. And I'm gonna call this show selected. Okay. So button click, maybe that's not the best name, but yeah, it's okay. We can use this button click. So here we have this button click method, and what that will do is it will show me some more information. And for now, it's just gonna do the following. It's just gonna check if the match that was selected is not empty. So lb matches dot selected item is not equal empty or null. Because if it's null, then I don't want anything to happen. But if it's not null, I want to show something in the message box. And I'm gonna show something like selected match is going to be plus, and in here I'm gonna show all the different matches. So I need something like lb matches dot selected item as a match, and from that I want to have the team, because now the lb matches selected item is not a match class, but I want to use it as a match. And there I want to show team 1 plus an empty space plus the next row. So I'm gonna copy this here, gonna put it into the next line, and here I don't want to show the team, I want to show the score 1. Then in the next line I want to show the score 2, and finally I want to show to team 2, and afterwards I don't need empty spaces anymore, and I can use the colon, and actually like this, the semicolon. Okay, so that's how I can show something on the message box, and in this case I'm going to show my team. By the way, once again, so you see lb matches selected item. The selected item is an object, and I want to use it as a match so that I can access its team 1, team 2 and score properties. Otherwise I couldn't do that. So if I leave that out, I cannot just call team 1. I'm going to show you in a second. So here, let's say I have this lb matches dot selected item dot, and here you can see it doesn't offer me the properties because this is an object. This selected item is just an object, and it only has those methods available, equals, toString, and so on. But what I actually need is the properties of my match. And I know that the object that was selected is a match object. That's why I can access its properties. Great. So now let's go ahead and test that. And after that, we'll be done with this video. So I hope you could follow along and it's all good. So now I've selected Barca, or PSG versus Barca, show selected. And as you can see, selected match PSG 3-2 Barca. So this is the current score. And here you could of course go ahead and add some more information, or you could even open up a new window in which you show all the different information like the lineup of the match of the two teams and so forth. All right. That was quite a long video and we did quite some stuff. We used list boxes, you saw that. Then we used the grid again. Well, we've seen how to use that already. But what was interesting in this one was, for one, that we have created a class which is just containing properties which we used in order to create this little match list, which is pretty cool because we can easily extend that as we go. And we also used data binding in here. So we bound to a property within our class, within our main window class, which is our match here. So we can easily access that. And that's pretty cool. Okie dokie. So I'd say that's good for this video. See you in the next one.